That was Willie Nelson singing Peaceful Revolution. I love that. He had launched a little banter before we get going here, guys. He had launched a peace initiative through the Peace Research Institute. He asked a lot of people to contribute and play and cover that song. And it was really just geared around having people focus on peace and coming together and finding unity. And it was really encouraging. And I think he would love what we've got going on here, and especially when we talk about independent and third parties as well. So how you doing today, Damo?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, it's been a busy and an eventful week in the MAHA movement. I'm stoked to get an update from our friends at the Council on Domestic Relations. Before we really get going, America Mission, are we streaming?
Yes, we are, and I need to mute. How was that double sound there? Yes, we are streaming, and we're streaming to X Live, QUX TV, Rumble, Pilled, Kick, YouTube, and Facebook. And I'll be putting the links in the purple pill.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Everyone, please. Everyone, please reshare the space. Should be a good conversation. And so here we go. Welcome to the Midday MAHA. Happy Wednesday, everybody. This is our demilitarized zone for discourse. And today I'm really excited because we're going to be really diving into the prospect of independent candidates, independent campaigning, independent third parties. And we have a great guest today with us. We have Levi here. He is the chair of the We the People Party. So I'm stoked to get into it with him. I'm trying to get Council of Domestic Relations up here on stage so they can offer a little update first. And this is something we really want to build into the beginning of these spaces because they're doing just fantastic work in tracking and updating and prioritizing all the initiatives that are going on around the country and building out the organizational grassroots coalition. And they did some really rad stuff with American values this week that I want to give them a chance to talk about. Oh, here we go. Is that Danielle?
That is me.
Hey, Danielle, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. Was I interrupting you, or do you want to?
No. Let's go ahead and cue you up. So, okay. Council on Domestic Relations been doing some awesome work, and I'm really excited to sort of give them the floor at the beginning of these spaces to talk about, as they continue really dialing in on the breadth and the depth of the MAHA movement. What's going on? What do we need to know? What can we do? So, Danielle, with that, totally go for it.
Absolutely. So, just a pretty quick update today, but. If you missed it, Bobby's had 2 press conferences this week that are really worth sitting and listening to. The first was yesterday morning in Indiana. We actually helped him produce that event. Got a ton of press there and some really key MAHA stakeholders. We had 5 state reps. I think actually a few may have packed themselves in there at the end too. On top of that, senators. Comptroller AG, we had Leah Wilson, who is the executive director of Stand for Health Freedom. Her husband, Dr. Nick Wilson, is a chiropractor and very influential in that medical space. Carrie Bundy was there. She's our grassroots coordinator at Coder. So everybody really showed up, thankfully, and even on short notice, because Bobby and Dr. Oz flew in to have a press conference with Governor Braun. If you don't know about Mike Braun, he's probably, I would say, kind of an up-and-comer in the gubernatorial space. He signed 9 executive orders in the MAHA vein yesterday. Some of those are really interesting and possibly could be something we shape into model legislation here at Coder too. Some of the key things he really targeted were, one, that I think a lot of people have heard about, like getting dyes and certain additives out of food lunches, tackling the whole SNAP benefit angle to that. one of the ones that I really liked, and the reason I think they brought Dr. Oz in, is that Governor Braun signed an executive order to go through Medicaid with a fine-tooth comb and start getting rid of the people who are kind of gaming the system, fraudulently sitting on taxpayer-funded health care, and start buttoning that up a little bit more so we're not being, our dollars aren't being taken advantage of. So that was a pretty good press conference. You're going to see him popping up a lot in several different states, like he has in Utah and Arizona and Indiana this past week. He's going to be kind of making his way through, and I think that'll mean a lot of exciting things coming at the state level. Today, he had a really good press conference that everybody should be interested to hear about. So I know a few days ago, the internet was kind of on fire because Bobby said he's going to get an answer to what causes autism by September in his Trump cabinet meeting. And he's starting to kind of deliver on the details of how that's going to happen, what kind of things they're going to be looking at in their studies, and why he thinks they can turn it around so quickly. Because I know we have a lot of people out here saying, how's he going to do it by September? This kind of data always takes years. We don't have years. So things are much more advanced now that we have the AI features and the digital space and all of the digital medical data. They're going to be able to parse a lot of that data and start doing what should have been done with it already, but hasn't been, to really look retroactively at information and analyses we already have and sort of use those data points to get to the root cause of what everyone else has been talking about. He's very transparent that he wants to look at everything, right? He's not going in here looking for his desired outcome. He's going to look at parents' ages, parents' medical conditions. Did mom have diabetes when she got pregnant? How many ultrasounds was she exposed to? What's in the food, what's in the water, what's in the air? Is it radiation? Like, this is a full scope picture. It's not just vaccines the way many people are painting it. But he did really narrow down this morning, and I think we can get the link up in the nest here in a minute. He narrowed down on what the autism statistics actually are. Some of that's kind of been tweaked or not entirely revealed to the public. So 2 years ago, our rate was 1 in 36. He is affirming it is now 1 in 31 per the CDC, and that it's 1 in 20 among boys. In California specifically, which kind of tends to reflect the national trend, it's 1 in 12.5 boys.
Holy shit.
Yeah, right? So this is something we need to be talking about because it's going up year over year. And that was a big part of his conference today, was really stressing that we have to do away with this widely promoted myth that autism rates are increasing just because we know what it looks like and we're more aware and we're diagnosing it better. That's actually a very small percentage of what's happening here. The data affirms that real cases of autism are increasing every year. And I think the most alarming statistic he probably put out this morning is that since 1992, or rather, I think the data maybe came a few years later, but the data is based on births in 1992 going forward. Between then and now, the rate of autism has jumped 480% in the United States. So that's significantly alarming. And I think our job in this space as this activist movement is we need to start kind of denormalizing that to people. That should have their hair standing up because no other genetic or neurological disorder does this. Only autism is growing like that. And that's why we need to stress that, yes, there may be a genetic predisposition, but there's an environmental trigger that's turning those on where they exist. That most of these children who are developing autism would never have developed it if they were not exposed to certain environmental triggers. And it may be more than one. And we may be talking about the toxic soup, which we're all probably really familiar with in here. But it's really drastic. He spoke about how a quarter of kids are nonverbal or non-toilet trained, or they have other features like stimming and toe walking, sensory problems, banging, head banging, rocking. There's a lot of little nuanced features that come with autism, and even some of those I think are starting to be integrated into society, and we're seeing everybody try to kind of whitewash them and just claim they're quirky, or this is just their personality, or they have social anxiety, so they're probably on the spectrum. We need to separate all of that. Those people are not autistic. Autism, I actually really liked what Walter, I'm going to butcher his last name, so I'm not going to say it, but you can look up the press conference. One of the associate professors that Bobby brought in this morning, he made a statement at the end that said autism is a real disability, a true disability, and it is not a quirky personality thing. And I just wanted to like scream that when he said that, like, say it louder for the people in the back.
Yeah, just to clarify real quick. So what you're
Yeah.
saying is when they're counting these autism statistics, they're not talking about, for instance, Asperger's. They're talking about like nonverbal, can't care for themselves, that sort of a level of
Well,
autism?
Asperger's and autism are separate now, but so they're talking about just kids diagnosed on the spectrum. That still is the spectrum. Some kids are high functioning, some are far more severe, but they're saying a quarter of them, or most cases now, are leaning toward more severe. If I put my thinking cap on and I look at it through just the slant of toxins, our toxin overload is only increasing, right? So that may theoretically make sense that not only is autism becoming more prevalent, but the cases being diagnosed are more severe in nature. That may be true if it's all being caused by toxin exposure, because the amount of toxins we're all being exposed to is also going up year over year. And we're not doing anything to really mitigate them. So I'm just really encouraged by what he had to say this morning. Really hit the nail on the head, and I think he actually imparted some good talking points. If I can quote Bobby, he said, "This is an individual tragedy. Autism destroys families, but more importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children. These children are children who should not be suffering like this. These kids many of them were fully functional, and they regressed because of some environmental exposure into autism." And this is the part I really love. He said, "These are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem, never go out on a date. And many of them will never use the toilet unassisted. And we have to recognize we are doing this to our children, and we need to put an end to it." So I'm the most optimistic I've probably been so far in his short stint here in HHS. I think he's on the right track. He's pushing back on the right things. He even kind of needled at the press and told them how they should be much more skeptical, and that this is going to be widely distributed, this data, and they're going to follow the same process they always have. They want gold standard science. They want universities and researchers replicating their data and looking into it, and that nobody is going to be gaslit or penalized or censored in any way for whatever their outcome of their data is. He wants that transparency, even if it doesn't agree with what people think he's looking for. So this is really good today. We're on a very good trajectory, and that's the majority of my update for you.
That is an amazing job. And it was so refreshing to hear from him today, because I know we've all been kind of on the edge of our seats a little bit. Like, okay, he's in there. We know you're doing admin stuff, but, talk to us. What's going on? So it was so refreshing to see that come out today. I shared it in the Jumbotron and in the community as well. And
Awesome.
yeah, beautiful synopsis, Danielle. That was just
Awesome.
great.
Yeah, totally. And I want to let America Mission jump in here for a second. Over the longer haul, I'd love for these segments to maybe represent the first part of the show, and we can have a little open conversation about what's going on. And then maybe we'll start making like the main topic and guest the second half of the space. But also, American Mission, after you get a chance to speak, Danielle, I want you to take a second to toot your guys' horn and talk about the work you did to organize the show up, the attendance of the press conference from yesterday. But first, American Mission, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick, I just want to let you know, American Mission, we streamed that conference. I put the link in the bubble, so it's on our X Live and all the other platforms. Unfortunately, I did start it when they said they were going to begin, but they didn't begin for like 29 minutes, so you have to start about halfway in
So
there.
fast forward.
Yeah, and then I did put the CDC, a link to the CDC report also in the Purple Pill, and that's it.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Like awesome work as always. Thank you guys so much. And yeah, Danielle, why don't you tell folks like what you were able to do to help make yesterday's press conference a success? I think it's important for people to know.
Yeah, I think it's just really all about relationships, and we've had them and nurtured them for a long time, and now is finally our time to shine and our time to leverage the kind of network we've built. And so there's going to be a little bit of a reckoning coming in, and I think people are going to be surprised how organized we are, because it's going to look like it came out of nowhere, but really we've had this organization behind the scenes that looked like it was in a bunch of silos, but Coder has really been able to step in and become kind of the interstitial tissue between all of them, the connecting joints to pull everybody together and make us work together as one big machine. And that's where the power is the unity, right? That's why we're all here. That's why we recognize the grassroots force, and we're building that on that kind of inner circle ledge to support Bobby and support his events and what he's teeing up to do. And at the same time, we're going to be building the organic grassroots connections out here with the listeners and the activists and the doers in their states, to try to zipper those two communities together and just make this one big effective body of people who are ready to take their country back.
Totally. And so specifically yesterday, you got like 36 hours notice from American Values that this thing was going to be happening. And you managed to pull together what, like 15 or 20 significant people, including elected representatives and other heavy hitters, to show up for this thing?
Right. I mean, that's what we've got to do. This is the time. So yeah, we did. We showed up yesterday, and I think it was a good thing. And it's a lot for what we were able to do in 36 hours. So I look forward to seeing what we can pull off together once we have 96 hours. That would be ideal.
Totally. Or even weeks. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
We're working towards that with the Midday MAHA spaces on getting topics and guests sort of queued up a week or more in advance so that we can be even more prepared and have even more meaty and valuable conversations, even though I think we've done a pretty good job for the amount of lead time we usually have on it. But yeah, I was just so impressed with that, Danielle. You and Billy are doing such incredible work. I will continue to speak your praises and be grateful for us being able to work together and for us figuring out how the work you're doing mostly behind the scenes can weave into what we're doing in holding these conversations and connecting folks and sort of activating the grassroots. So as always, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
For sure.
We love you guys.
Yeah, same. And hopefully we'll see you Friday and have more fun stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
And with that, let's go ahead and get into our main topic here. Levi, I'm super grateful that you're able to join us today. Levi is the chair of the We the People Party. They have ballot access in I think 5 or 6 states, and my understanding is it used to be more. And then the party sort of got a little inactive, but Levi jumped in there and has managed to whip things back into shape. And now they're building back up, running into these midterm elections in 2026 that are extremely important. And I know that most of us in the MAHA community care a great deal about making sure that good candidates, many independent candidates, are identified and supported and ideally able to win all around the country. So Levi, thanks for being here. I'm stoked to talk to you today about both the We the People Party and more generally about running independent candidates, supporting independent candidates, and some of the mechanical pieces of how to do that.
Yeah, happy to be here and happy to answer any questions around that. We're in a really beautiful position these next 2 years. I think we're growing much faster than expected. A lot of those other states that closed were forced to be closed. They actually had record numbers. So, like, we would actually already be the second largest party in the country if that hadn't happened. So we still have those people. They just, because of lawfare on many sides, they were taken out. But we're able to build back up because it's not a presidential election. So they're not getting contested every time they build now. You know, before they would send a team of lawyers every single state. Now they don't do that. Those guys, the war dogs, aren't being paid, aka the lawyers for the lawfare. They're no longer getting paid, so they're not going to do it for free. So now we can build for the next 3 years pretty easily, comparatively.
That's great to hear. And I noticed what you said, and I think a lot of us are aware, and maybe some of us aren't aware. One of the few things that the Democrats and the Republicans agree on, aside from taking corporate money usually, is blocking third parties. It is a vested interest between the two major parties to prevent competition. And it's extremely detrimental to not just political discourse in this country, but representation. And even leverage, right? Because when there's only two parties, they can sort of establish polarized positions and essentially tell the electorate, what are you going to do about it? Pick one. But when there's a strong independent candidate, and Bobby was a wonderful example of this, when there's a strong independent candidate that's pulling real numbers, it forces the two sides to sort of wrestle with that and take on some of those independent positions. And what you'll find, I think, often is if you have effective independent candidates, even if they don't have much of a shot of winning, it's extremely valuable because you'll find that it impacts the platforms of the other two parties that in most cases, not all, and hopefully not all for long, have a better chance of actually taking the election. Do you find that that's true too, Levi?
Yeah, and the main reason they do that is money. So they created this myth in America that they're the only ones with money. So independents usually out fundraise Republicans and Democrats proportionately. In the last 2024 election, I was helping being one of those fundraisers in a bunch of states. We actually had a 10-to-1 ratio on Republicans. But then what they did is they just lawfared out all our budgets. And so early on, so that we weren't able to get the momentum in the final year, even though for the previous 2 years we were larger than the RNC. So that's the misconception they put out there, and the way they keep it is by rigging all the races around the states so that they're one party. So 95% of races are one party. So we have a higher reelection rate than China in terms of our local representatives. They have much more democratic system in terms of that local representation. They have like a 70% turnover of new leaders. We have 98% get reelected. And 95% of those races aren't even challenged. So
95%? We knew
they
the number
don't
was
touch-
high and we wanted to talk about that today.
Insane.
But wow. Uncontested. And that's the lowest hanging fruit you could imagine.
Yeah, that's for executive races. So they have different categories, but the one we would normally refer to, yeah, it's that high. But you know, there's also like municipalities and water districts, right? So it's between 85 and 95, right? It varies year to year because there's off years. So, but basically, what we would refer to, it would be around 90s. And then for Senate, it's 98% reelection rate. They have a 16% approval rating, and they have a 98% reelection rate.
And are you specifically referring to the federal level there? Because
Yeah.
most states have a state senate as well.
Yeah, the federal Senate level. And so that's the crazy part. And so we actually have been able to get authoritarian outcomes with democratic means. Like they've been able to find enough lawfare, enough little laws, enough tricks over the last few hundred years to get the outcomes they want, which is like 100% control across the board in all 50 states. And I'm not saying that as a negative. I'm saying that as a positive because they're very, very fragile. So the reason they're so threatened by third parties is their donor base is only used to paying for 5% of the races. They're not used to 95% are free because there's nobody running. So they don't have to pay for any opposition research, any kind of real campaign. So they're basically got democracy on a 95% off discount. And so all their donor base is very, very fragile, because if you go to a state and you run a strong third party and you start running hundreds of candidates, in the local, from school boards to water boards to state senators, all that stuff, mayors, then overnight that state costs like 10x, 20x, 30x as the year previous. So they do not have the donors to cover that.
That's wild. And think about that, everybody, strategically, that if we effectively ran candidates in more of these races, they would have to spread their money more broadly, and those bigger races we would be able to be more competitive in, just by virtue of them having to move those funds around more, to spread them thinner. Man, I did not realize that was the case, and I want to get into more of like, what do you see as the strategy for that, and everything else. I just wanted to say real quick, Bryn, I'm not ignoring you. I just want to sort of focus on a little more of a tight conversation with our guests, and I'm very happy to bring you into the conversation. I appreciate you being here. So Levi, having said all that, and not assuming that everyone should support the We the People Party candidate, but more generally is like supporting the idea of independent candidates and third-party candidates, what's the strategy here, both like independently and as a coalition of people from a diverse spread of third parties that are willing to work together to ensure that there's better third-party representation?
Yeah, in organizing meetings, we call that the all cause, or that's what I've been doing for the last few decades. But basically, it's like there's this higher mission that we all have, and that we all suffer very similar consequences. And there's no reason not to work together between different ideological boundaries, because 98% or 90% of the time, we have stuff in common. Like, we agree on most issues, like whether it's we need cheaper roads and better healthcare, like either free or cheaper. Like, something has to be done about the cost. Something has to be done about the cost of housing. And all of these come from the two major duopoly parties giving their friends side deals. So that's why housing is so inexpensive. That's why roads are so expensive. Like I might have mentioned previously, in like Oregon, where I am, in Oregon, the roads cost 8 times downtown Paris. And they have the strongest unions in the world. And they're 8 times cheaper to build a road. Why? Because the level of graft is just unimaginable in America. It's the highest proportional in the world. Like, because we're the richest country in the history of the world. So our corruption proportionately is the highest. Like, in India, they might have more endemic corruption, but they have a lower dollar amount. Our guys have the biggest dollar amount ever. And so they play this other game that most Americans don't even conceive of, which is that they're older than the roads. They're older than a lot of the hospitals, the electricity. They're older than gas being used in cars. They're older than cars. And they've gotten a piece of every one of those industries that they regulated. They've gotten side deals in every state on every issue. And so third parties getting into these local offices and opening those budgets up to small businesses and to hire people in their state locally, and not shipping every industry to DC, where they get an 80%, 70% commission on every road and every hospital and every car. And the cars are lower, but like they put a markup on everything. So basically, we're paying this invisible DC tax on everything we do. And so any third party, libertarian, Greens, whatever, they all have a very strong financial incentive to collaborate, and also like for ballot or for their different independents that want to run for office. They all have those same barriers. Basically, any independent in the country has to run 2 races. They have to run the race to get on the ballot so people can even vote for them, which is the cost that Democrats and Republicans do not pay. It's free. And then they have to run a race so people know who they are and what their issues are. So they have to run 2 races. So they have to have 200% the cost of any Democrat in the country or Republican. So we need to collaborate as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong, if a party runs a presidential candidate and gets a certain percent of the vote, they have that same privilege the Democrats and the Republicans do, where they then automatically have ballot access nationwide?
No.
Okay, so correct me on this.
Yeah, that was some of the stuff that came out of the campaign. But basically, a percentage of the money, as far as I understand, the percent, because there's always all these nuances in politics, especially at the state level. But basically, that was to reimburse the campaign for the costs of running the election, and then that would help them build out 50 state access, right? Financially, like you don't get 50 state, like there are no federal political parties in America. The DNC and the RNC are purely symbolic entities. They have no actual power, like legally. It's only at the state level. So there's nothing above the states in terms of, and so when they get together at the RNC and DNC, it's just to give people the impression that there's unity and that this is a real body. But all the choices have been made before that, because all primaries are handpicked in America. So, right, like the electoral college is set up by hand. I know I've set up a bunch of them. Like the parties select their candidates. So like 5 to 6 people usually at the state level pick the presidential candidate, and then get their electors to confirm that they'll vote in line with what they select. And then they go to a convention where they have like a big spectacle. Like it's not like it's all just create the impression that there's all these choices. And so, but legally speaking, parties are corporations in America, and they have the legal ability to handpick their candidates.
Yeah.
So, and they always do.
So I might have misheard you or missed something you said about how like the Democrats and the Republicans don't have to pay for that ballot access part of the fight, right? They're already on the ballot. Is there a way for third parties to get to that point? Like if we're really successful, is there a path there where they're also just kind of just on the ballot?
So you have to do that state by state, and there's no way around that.
Okay, so it is state by state. In each state, is it different? Is it different rules state by state for how you sort of earn that privilege?
Oh yeah, it's radically different in each state. That's part of the nightmare of independence, is that it changes by the day in some states, like Arizona. Like when I did several parties there before, you would submit the signatures, and then they would change the form as you're submitting the signature. The day of, they'll change it, so that you have to go back and do it again and spend millions of dollars and redo everything. Right. So like that's a very common problem, but that's only those guys. It's technically illegal by their own laws in Arizona. In a lot of ways you could sue them, but you don't have the resources to do that, and that would drain your accounts for organizing. So that still wins for them. But in off years, when they're not doing presidential elections, those people aren't active. So like you can submit signatures and they'll accept them. The same people will accept the signatures and accept them because they're not getting when there's a presidential election, all 50 states become harder. You have to pay for, when you submit signatures, there's this window called like a challenge window. It's like 4 to 6 weeks usually, and allows the Democrats and Republicans to throw in legal barriers to your ballot access for free. So it's like this, there's like this trigger in all 50 states that basically make it really hard to get on. That's where the lawfare comes in. So it's like very cheap for them to sue us, which is why I was recommending so much to make parties in like Florida and around the country, where the party is actually much, much easier than the independent ballot. It's not always that easier, but the vast majority of time it is. So instead of spending, like in Florida, millions of dollars collecting signatures and then eventually going with a third party, if we just set up a third party with two to 10 people, we would have been able to get free ballot access, and they can't sue us. So
throughout the state for all positions, right? When you set up that party, you're talking about ballot access for all open positions that are being elected, right? Not just like one person for one seat.
Yeah, but it's also cheaper to do it at the presidential level because you need all the states. But yeah, it's a unique case because usually you don't need different states. You just need your state because you're a governor. It's all within one state. The presidential race is a unique thing. So basically, RFK ran into the problem that you had all these states, and if you had minor parties in them, he could have run for free with no legal challenges. And so we're trying to learn from that mistake and make it so that independents in the future can run easier and cheaper. Because right now, in every single state you go to and you're running for president as an independent, you have to do a double game. And that's also true at the state level for everybody running down ballot, which is they also have to do that double game. and it's exponential. So like if you set up a party in Florida and people can run all over, you're saving insane amount, millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars over the next couple of years because of just like, how many people run for mayor, multiple people, how many people run for, state senate, there's, dozens of positions. So
Right.
it's actually, one of the, I don't want to get into too much detail about it, but one of the reasons why we don't have a third party in this country is corruption in third parties. So there's this huge financial incentive for people who are longtime experienced people and also new, that happened a lot recently, to get millions of dollars on the side. So basically, when you go to these states and instead of setting up a party where it's like 10 people and they're volunteers and it's free, and then now you're not going to get a legal challenge. So you don't have to pay lawyers also in that state. So the lawyers and the signature people get millions of dollars if they don't set up a party. And they do it every year.
Yeah. Yeah, and it compounds in another way because rather than spending all that time and money gathering signatures, that time and money can be spent on actual campaigning. So when you're engaging with people, it's not, hey, sign this so I can get on the ballot. It's, hey, let's talk about our community and what's happening and my vision for it.
Yeah, no, that's probably the biggest reason why independents haven't been able to grow is because they keep cutting the legs out from under other independents because they don't want to build a party because then they don't get paid for the next 4 years because now it's free in the whole state. So all the independents can run for free. So you don't get paid per campaign. So instead of getting 800, these firms that help with them, they get 800, 500 customers, which are candidates. They now have zero. And so, and so you're right. And so all those candidates can now put that money into getting their name out there, marketing, and a lot of these races are very winnable. And that's the sad thing about the 95% of unchallenged races. There's like 200 votes, 20 votes for some of these positions that control billions of dollars. They run unopposed and they only get like 40 votes. I'm just like, these are winnable positions.
It's insane.
And like, if you want to become like, I think it's the mayor of Chicago, it's a fraction of 1%. So if you get a fraction of 1%, which third parties regularly can turn out, you can become the mayor of a multi-billion-dollar city that is, it's a major city. And so like all across America, there's these forgotten parts of America where we've been so busy with the mainstream media flashing the 5% of races. Oh, this governor race, oh, the senator race. They've completely ignored that like major cities are running like 1 or 2%, major budgets, major things, like everything is just like dead. And like nobody's challenging it for generations. Their great grandfather didn't even get challenged for that position. And usually they're hereditary. A lot of these roles are father to son. Like most of them are father to son. And so,
wow.
And because they control, like, for example, if you control the water in California, that's billions of dollars. And like that means every farmer has to come to you. Every major big ag people have to come to you. Everybody has to come to you because you control water supply. And so like, if you run local people into these uncompetitive positions, and then you just get on a Zoom call and go, hey, we have like 12 water boards and they all control a couple $100 million to a couple $1 billion, depending on the city or the area they're in. You now have a giant like de facto agency that you can run to like help farmers or like help agriculture or like change the game. But nobody goes into these races because Democrats don't care. Republicans don't care. There's no money. Nobody cares about them. So they've forgotten. They have this giant machine that they've just forgotten how to run for generations. And so if anybody comes in, yeah.
And sorry to interrupt. And it's also this challenge where we've been sort of baited into focusing on federal level races instead of local politics. So, I mean, it's already hard enough for us to get people to pay attention to their state legislature, their city council, which have a profound impact on their day-to-day lives. But you're talking even like the water board, the school board, like the mosquito control. Like there's some really obscure positions. Levi, what you've been saying in the last 10 minutes is a way bigger insight than I expected to have in this space. I'm really thrilled to have you here and to have this conversation. And by the way, John, Marlon, I'm not ignoring you guys. We're just sort of like holding questions for now to have a bit of a tighter back and forth with Levi, because he's just got such good information, and I don't want him to get lost in the sauce. And I'm really excited to get you and Marlon and Bryn into the conversation in just a few minutes, I think. And just to reset the room real quick for anyone who's joined us in the middle of this is the Midday MAHA. We do this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 p.m. This is a space where we talk about all sorts of MAHA-related issues. I like to call this a demilitarized zone for discourse. I encourage you to bring your divergent viewpoints and information and perspectives. We speak respectfully here. We have to recognize how much we have in common, how much shared interest we have in the health of this nation. And these are just extremely critical things, even if there are other critical things where we are wildly opposed. We've got to be able to put some of these things to the side to productively collaborate on the things that we agree on. And to that end, this conversation is so powerful because we're talking about how to get independent candidates elected to positions around the country. And what Levi is sharing here is that there's like a 90+% win rate for incumbents. That I think you also said it was like a 90% rate of lower offices running unopposed, and that the phenomenon of people running as independents individually is probably not the move. Because if you set up a state political party, which is actually not that hard, then you can get around a lot of these ballot access court battles, save a ton of money, a ton of time, and open up ballot access across the board for independent candidates for a fraction of the cost and effort, while also creating sort of an infrastructure for coalition and collaboration. Was that a good TLDR, Levi?
Yes, it is. And there's some states like Texas. We have good candidates. Like we already have governor candidates lined up. We have people in New York who are good governor candidates. But both these states, New York, California, and Texas, they have huge volunteer networks, donor networks for independents. They're like the main places you pull volunteers from in all independent parties, or all third parties. But the problem is you need 4 to 6 weeks. You need like an insane amount of signatures. So it costs $2 to $3 million for like anybody to go in there and get ballots. So the vast majority of states are much.
And that's if they're not running under a third party.
No, that's to become a third party.
To become a third party. Gotcha.
So, and then every year Texas wipes it clean. So if you don't have a candidate who gets enough, like 5%, 3% or something like that, pretty high percentage, much higher than other states, they wipe out your party. So they've basically built the laws where it's really hard to make it, and then they wipe the slate clean constantly. So that's their anti third party. That's basically how they maintain their one party status, pretty much.
Yeah.
Except for Austin. Yeah. But like,
It's interesting that New York and Texas are places that have the strongest networks for independent support, because my intuitive check on that is that they're two of the hardest states to get independents elected to higher office. Local office, maybe not so hard, but higher office, I would imagine, governor and whatnot, it might be extremely difficult versus some of the smaller states and maybe the Midwest or other southern states or,
Yeah, and that's the problem with trying to set up a third party with a presidential election, which is that you're having to go in the most expensive, hardest states first. Because Texas
and the hardest to win.
Yeah, they're hardest to win because Texas has a deadline that's before most states. So you have to get your game going there very quickly. You have to get it done very quickly. I know I was leading the Texas for 3 parties. I was leading the Texas chapter state amongst others. And so like I was going down to Austin, getting these things signed up and setting up all that stuff. And basically it's expensive. So what we would do is build out in all the states where it's easier. There's about 25, 26 states where it's like manageable without a budget. Like you don't need a budget. You just need a strong volunteer group and you can build out. And then you use that as proof of concept and value because you're like, look, we're already at 270 electoral votes. So whoever our candidate is in next 4 years, they for free with no legal challenges can get on the debate stage. They can get on all these things. They'll change the numbers, but you're already a viable party, and then you can go, hey, we need help in Texas. We need a fundraise for Texas and for New York and California. Those are the 3 states with the most electoral votes, which is why they're the hardest. That's why they're the hardest rigged, because they're the states that are the ones that could help independents if they won one of them so much. So they've purposely, all 3 of those states have a ton of electoral votes, a ton of money, a ton of people. They have armies of independents that have been there for every single third party that I've ever set up. They're always the biggest chapters. But the laws have been rigged the most because they're the most frightened. So basically, wherever laws are difficult is where they're frightened previously. And then they just crack down and make it harder and harder and harder. And so the states where it's easier are just states that have never been challenged before, like Arkansas or like Tennessee or like Maine or something, like rural Maine. Like, and if you get Nebraska and rural Maine, they're not winner takes all states. So they have a few electoral votes in rural areas or in different areas. So basically, you can bargain. If you get those 2 states and you have a party there, you can bargain for tens of millions of dollars with any party that ever wants to run, because they all try to get Nebraska and Maine. Like, I know I was up with the Maine team and they spent $16 million, I think, in like a month trying to get rural Maine set up. So like, and that's because they have electoral votes and all the races are so close because neither side are really serving the people. So, and they don't plan to at any point in the future. So they know the races will get closer and closer and closer and closer, which means those 2 states, even having one electoral vote in a rural area, is enough to hold them up. So they have to bargain with you to get presidential candidates. And so, so basically build on the easy states, get the 2 states where you can bargain, and then build out to the heaviest expensive states last. You can start today. You just got to be aware that it costs money and a few of the larger states. But I mean, having 40 state access for relatively cheap, instead of spending, like the Ford party spent $165 million, I believe, in 5 years, and they only have 2, and we already have twice their size. And so
This is awesome.
There's a way to do it right.
Yeah.
Where you're strategic and you're not focused on a 1 year 50 state build like a presidential race. You're trying to build methodically with we the people, actually getting local leaders involved in decision making and not just bulldozing everybody with lawyers and then throwing money at the problem.
Right. And that's the thing too, is just to double underscore, having third parties is not just about running a presidential candidate. It's arguably in the near term more about running local candidates and building that patchwork across the country of actual independent representation that also holds down the framework to then start running presidential candidates and to grow that framework. And so everything you're saying here is kind of blowing my mind, that there's actually a strategy here with some very low-hanging fruit to make major strides in the midterms on those local elections with third parties. And that starts building a wave, a buzz. It starts breaking through the belief wall that we can do it, that there's actually wins we can achieve, because we stop going after the biggest, hardest thing first and start doing things that are achievable. It's just awesome. One random factoid, and I don't know if this is true in every state, but one thing that I heard from this last presidential election, correct me or offer some nuance here, is that you can be endorsed, as a single candidate can be endorsed by multiple parties, and in some, if not all states, you'll actually show up multiple times on the ballot. Like your name will show up as the Libertarian Party will have its line on the ballot, and the We the People Party will have its line on the ballot. And if they're endorsing the same people, you're on there twice. Is that true?
I ran as one of those candidates previously to get experience before I built a party, and because Oregon has fusion voting, so it allows for that. Not every state does. That's a state by state thing, and they usually just put initials next to your name. You're not multiple times on the ballot, but these are very state specific things. These are even county specific. So
sure.
Like, so that may be the case in some states, but generally speaking, I don't think so. But it doesn't mean that it's not valuable for millions of people in those states that it does exist. So
it's an interesting hack, right? And it's also an opportunity for third parties, multiple third parties, to not have to battle each other. They can rally around a single candidate. And I love the idea of an independent candidate coming in with like 3 stamps of approval from different parties, all saying, that's our guy, that's our guy. I just think that's a really powerful message to send.
I might want to burst the ball a little bit on that, because what's kind of known in secret amongst the independent leaders in different states is that most parties are bought. So it's legal to bribe party leadership, right? So third party leadership. So one of the things we the people trying to do to fight corruption and try to get good candidate quality in our different states is that we're making the voting of like who selects the candidates into the membership. So the members pick the leader. So like it doesn't matter if you're a party leader or the chair, like I am. I put in the bylaws that everybody has chair powers, basically. So it's decentralized. So our people can select our candidates. They can select most of the budget. They can select all the issues. So they go, okay, in like Portland, what do you guys want? It's going to be very different than rural Oregon, which is very Trump land. They're going to have different candidates, different issues, but it's all selected by the people. So the problem with traditional third parties, everybody else, is that whether it's libertarians who are 70-year-old party, but very, very old infrastructure, or it's the Greens or anything, they're all like 5-people committees that are legally bribable. And they always are bribed, always. So like in my state, they got sued twice, the libertarians recently, for working with the Republicans, which is illegal, and throwing races. The Greens always work with the Democrats. And so if you look at their ballot line for these third parties, quote unquote third parties, they're all incumbents. So part of the reason how they get to the 95% is the third parties are rigged. Because they bribe the leaders, and it's completely legal to do that. And so, and there's a reason for that. Like, you don't even need to record a lot of those donations. So basically,
that's wild.
And it's super, super common. So if you're trying to run for third party, your main experience will be right today that they're not going to run you unless if it hurts a Democrat or Republican. They won't touch you. They're never in a million years going to help you. And so you look at like who. Like, that's why I had to run for 2 parties, is because I found out the leader of the party that had nominated me was a Democrat organizer, and I was running against a Democrat. And so he tried to throw the race and kick me out of the third party before. And then the council voted against him and they confirmed it. But that was a very rare case that I was able to do that. Like most people, I was just able to bargain back. Most people, so if you look, the way to know for sure, like you don't have to trust me on this, you can check. You look at the names that third parties nominate, like Working Families Party, whether it's Libertarians or Greens, they're all already in office. So it's Sam in office runs against Sam. It's Samantha against Samantha. It's Richard against Richard. Like, and so the third party, the opposition, is the same guy as the guy in office. And so what they do, the reason they do that is because Democrats are a toxic brand and Republicans are a toxic brand for the vast majority of voters. Like they're less than a quarter of voters trust either of them. And so for the vast majority of people, they need to look more independent or more green or more whatever. So Democrats will go for a green thing to look like they're outside Democrats, and Republicans will get libertarians to look like they're outside Republicans. And so it's just like fake branding to make people look like third party or outsiders, but we're running in the main party, but we're really independent thinkers, and they just pay for these votes. So that they pay the party, and then party
that doesn't surprise
them.
me at all, honestly. And it's really valuable to learn that, because as we're talking about third parties, there's sort of an assumption: screw the Republicans, screw the Democrats. So third parties are great, let's support them. And so getting that inside scoop on how a lot of the sort of legacy third parties, if you will, are also corrupt is really helpful. And it seems like we can still use the third party apparatus to sort of encourage and work together to get multiple third parties set up. And ironically, they'll even have to challenge the other third parties. But yeah, wow, that is just such a wild phenomenon. And again, it really doesn't surprise me. But I'm hopeful, hearing everything that you're saying, that we, the People Party, while achieving especially that low-hanging fruit ballot access around the country, that we might be able to work together to help other groups that have a more particular idea of what their ideal third party would represent, helping them get set up. And one of the things you said, how the structure of those third parties where the leadership chooses the candidates, so there's no real people's choice. Those are the sorts of values that I think are really powerful to make sure these aspiring new third parties have, because then at least you're making sure that at the party level democracy also still exists. So like, wow. We are almost at an hour mark here. And so I do want to start opening it up. I'm sad that John didn't stick around. I'm sorry that we wore him out. And I'm especially sorry because John was actually the winner of our first weekly MAHA challenge, and I hadn't had a chance yet to inform him of that. So I was looking forward to telling him today on the space. But Bryn had her hand up first a while ago. So Bryn, I wanted to let you go if you still had something to say. Oh, Bryn might have stepped away, but hey, Bryn, there you are.
Hey there. No, I was just trying to see what kind of space this was. It seems like an independent space. I like that. I do think there are sides of the Republicans that's true concerning finances and how we can spend money better within the I don't know, this it's stuff in the humanities on the progressive side. I think the Republicans could be a little bit more fair about that, But yeah, I think both sides, Republicans and Democrats, should work together instead of being, just Democratic or just Republican.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I agree. And just to give you a little background, this space is called the Midday MAHA. We do it 3 times a week, 2 p.m., Monday, Wednesday, Friday. My intention for this space, which I hope is appreciated, is that this is really an open space for independents and people from all sorts of the political spectrum that are really exhausted with the toxic politics of today and the last, honestly, like 20 plus years. And so even if you find yourself by default voting for Democrat or by default voting for Republican because they end up being your only choices that are even remotely close to what you believe, I'm hoping this will be a space for you to find an alternative, or at minimum to be able to have open conversations with people that are not going to be reactionary. They're not going to be by default judgmental if they disagree with you, even if they agree with you by a wide margin. This is really meant to be, for lack of a better term, like a safe space for us to get together and talk and work through this stuff, because the way we're doing it currently is just not working. So I'm glad you found your way here. I hope you're enjoying it.
I am, and it's important because a lot of spaces that I'm in, or even in my own spaces, there's a lot of cannibalism going on. Like we're eating each other alive, and we're on the same point of view, and it's frustrating because it's like we're just trying to talk about issues, but we put ourselves in echo chambers. It's like we need to be able to face these issues and face different conversations and different ideas head on with a positive, outgoing attitude.
Totally.
Without that,
and
without that, you're going nowhere.
Yeah.
You're just spinning.
Yeah. And without assuming where you're coming from politically, I would say that because this is like MAHA is the Make America Healthy Again movement that Bobby Kennedy sort of created as he conceded the election and joined the Trump team. And there's a lot of values that he was representing in his campaign for president that we've tried our best to carry into this MAHA movement. And there's also a lot of issues he prioritized that are shared here generally, perhaps not 100% across the MAHA movement. So I would love to find you coming back here again and again. And if you hear topics where you're just like, what the hell are these people talking about? I would super encourage you to pop up and grab a mic and share your perspective and what you believe to be true, or what you know, or where you're coming from. And I promise that most people here will by default meet you respectfully. And if somebody doesn't, I will stop them and we'll sort of disentangle that, because it's really one of my highest values in even holding these spaces.
Yeah, that's good. Is this a Trump supporting space too? or
Not
'cause I'm not really a
not
Trump fan,
overtly.
but
I would imagine that most
okay,
people here generally are supporting Trump. I will say that
okay,
I came from being a grassroots organizer for over 20 years now. That up until about 8 months ago was an absolutely 100% never Trump ever. Um, and even now, there's still things that concern me. I'm particularly not super stoked on the fact that his style seems to lean into inflaming division. He really likes to talk down to and about
yeah,
people, and I'm not really about that. And so I have conflicting feelings and find myself in a very like soul searching position because there's other things
yeah,
about what's happening with how he was elected and the sorts of things that are happening that I actually do support and in ways that surprised me. So like yes, I would imagine most people here are either generally or almost like aggressively supportive of Trump. But I just hope
yeah,
that you wouldn't make too many assumptions about what that means.
yeah. No, I understand. Yeah, I'm definitely not a Trump supporter by any means, but at the same time, I'm like, there are reasonable people out there that do support Trump for various different
Mm-hmm.
reasons. So I can respect that.
Yeah,
So
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you being here, Bryn. Seriously, I'm so glad. I do want to move on to some other hands, but that was actually really awesome. That was the first kind of interaction we've had really in the Midday Maha spaces. We've only been doing them for going on 3 weeks now, and that just makes me really happy. Marlon,
cool.
and then I am super stoked to get to.
Thank you so much for letting me
Oh,
speak.
for sure, anytime. Please come back.
Hey, well, thanks for having me up. And Levi, yes, you're full of information. And to some of the people out there, a closed primary state has really put the fences up for independent candidates to come forward, not only in an independent realm, but also in a GOP mode. Okay, and what I mean by that is I have a particular state assemblywoman that I know deserves the job in my particular area, right? She did not win the convention vote. She lost by one vote. So basically, what she had to do was she had to, make sure that she had enough signatures to get through the adjudication process on the petitions. This was the way that we are getting her on the ballot. Now she is going to be on the ballot, but she's not going to be in column A with the vote getters for the Republicans. She's going to be in the B column and she'll be down the list. So, there are advantages. Levi, I have one question for you. I remember about 6 months ago that SCOTUS had put out a new amendment saying that they were not going to use the illegal immigrant population in our census. Now, I have not seen the new congressional and legislative lines here in New Jersey, but I can imagine that because of that, the population, especially here, it heavily weighs in that census and the legislative congressional lines. Levi, have you seen a difference yet where they're starting to exclude some of the immigrant population?
No, there's not been too many races that I'm aware of since then, but yeah, a lot of the focus with that question would be on general elections integrity, but I would point you to primary election integrity because in all 50 states, all the candidates are hand selected. And there's this idea that Democrats or Republicans have a choice that's literally manually selected. Even if they lose, they can pick them. And so, by the process you're talking about, your considerations would be there. It wouldn't be in the general where there's these other populations, because that's after the parties have already given you two choices. And
So doesn't that go back to the general bylaws of what your county is following? A lot of my GOP mirrors Democratic county.
yeah, so whenever you're trying to, there's several organizations that have reached out to us about this, and it's basically they're trying to make sure that people who are voting are supposed to vote. It's the right number of people. The addresses and stuff are recent, right? Because in every state, there's a pretty substantial number of old people, like, bad addresses, bad numbers, bad names on voter rolls, and they need cleaned on a regular basis, and they don't clean them. It's expensive and they don't care. Because as long as it favors their party, they don't bother fixing these things. So until like whatever party that's running that state feels like it's threatening to them, they probably won't clean them. And so that's probably what you're running into, right? Is that you're saying that they're no longer in the census counting these populations coming in, and therefore you're worried that, okay, well, this might be boosting or subtracting from local races. You can't check any of that until your state authorities actually clean them. And so getting them to clean them and petitioning them to clean them is kind of the main focus probably for that effort.
Yeah, it sounds like right back down to the roots of the Board of Elections and this adjudication process where they go over all these signatures of these new candidates. And yes, in my particular county, the GOP chair has the last word on the candidates that come forward. So the PC process doesn't work here, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, and there's a lot of upstream problems as well. So basically, independents have been dealing with this for 100 years, and Republicans are just starting to get a taste of the medicine that independents have been getting, which is that like we'll run a ballot initiative, and then 50% of the signatures don't get counted in every state. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like we run into this stuff all the time where we'll win a petition or we'll win like a position, and then they won't get counted. Things will get screwed up. There'll be all these mismatched numbers. Like they play this game with third parties for forever, since the beginning of time. So this is the first time people from major parties are starting to see this side of America, because the Democrats have been able to run unimpeded and Republicans unimpeded. So this is the first time they're experiencing, is the state maybe not doing a great job with running these things, or the parties themselves? And the funny thing is, a lot of these state constitutions do not include political parties. So they'll give political parties power where their state constitutions don't even delineate it. So like there's all these de facto informal checks and balances that don't actually exist. So like unraveling that and trying to get back to basics and trying to get good numbers, that's a big movement, and that's complementary to the third parties. It's a separate thing, but it does help us at least.
Awesome. Marlon, did you have more, buddy?
No, listen, I want to see the difference of what SCOTUS came out with the legislative and congressional lines. I'm really interested in, because in my particular area, 2 years ago, they had redesigned the congressional area, and exactly what you just said, Levi, that population did sway that vote in that district. And we're talking about assembly seats, so they don't go county by county. So this is, different towns that are wrapped in and taken out. So this is the tactic also, right? So Levi, thanks a lot for having me up, and Maha, appreciate it.
Real cool, man. Always appreciate you having here, buddy. Super excited to get to Tucker. 1 second, buddy. I just want to let everybody know we've got until 4 o'clock Eastern. It's about 50 minutes. And I really encourage you to get into this conversation. If you have any questions, if you have any thoughts or reflections, please get up here, grab a mic, and let's talk about it, and reshare the space, because we still got just under another hour to talk about this stuff. And we will absolutely be returning to this topic. And Levi, you've been such an amazing guest. I hope you return again and again for us, because we also would love to circle in with you on the back channels, because we're not just doing spaces. We are working towards actual grassroots organizing, and there's just so clearly a lot of synergy here with what you guys are working on and how we might be able to help you plug into the grassroots, and also the context of all the issues going on in the country that might empower your efforts in raising awareness and letting people know why they might want to vote and support a third party, because these are issues that are not going to change if the parties stay dominant the way they are. And now, Levi, I want to introduce you to Tucker Berger. This is a young man I met at the Independent National Convention in Denver last fall. He's from Tennessee. He's a total badass, just a really sharp kid that seems really dedicated, and his heart and his mind seem to be totally in the right place. And he's expressed interest in running for office and even activating kind of the whole state of Tennessee for independent candidates. So I'm getting a little tingle here that there might be a good good connection here. Tucker, so stoked you could be here for this one. I know you usually can't make it because it's your work day. What's going on, man?
Hey guys, hope everybody's having a good day. Yeah, man, I'm working today, so I might not be able to do this for too long. I'm going to try to keep this as quick as possible, not waste anybody's time. But Yeah, I've been interested in politics my whole life. I'm a working class guy. I come from a working class family, and I've never really felt like I was properly represented. I've been through a pretty interesting journey the past few years trying to figure out how I feel politically. And if I had to call myself anything, it's definitely an independent libertarian. And on that same note, basically in the past election, a lot of us sided with conservatives because the Democrat Party is nationally damaged. Its image is not good, and deservingly so. So a lot of us aligned ourselves with conservatives. I did here in the state of Tennessee. There weren't a lot of independent options. But what the conservatives done in the past year has been blocking pornography, banning hemp flower, banning the use of herbal kratom substances, and then giving us like a terrible school choice program that basically abandons the public schools. That's just in my opinion. But in the past year, I feel like our representatives have wasted time when they could have used this time to fix other things like the cost of housing, the environment, chemicals being spilled everywhere into our ecosystems that we end up reabsorbing into our bodies. Multiple other problems such as opiate addiction, alcohol addiction. Tennessee actually has some of the worst rates of any other state of those problems, but our conservative representatives and a lot of the Democrat representatives in Tennessee are not paying attention to that. Instead, they're just wasting time on little stuff that doesn't help anybody. So I want everybody to feel like they're represented. I want people to feel like they have their maximum amount of freedoms. I think that consenting, responsible adults should be able to make choices to do what they want to do. So, I would love to run under the We the People Party name, because anybody can just be Joe Blow, independent, and, people usually don't give them a second glance. So We the People has a really good name. It resonates with me very well because I'm all about the Constitution. I'm all about protecting our rights. That's why I consider myself an independent libertarian. But my county specifically would only take 800 signatures to start the We the People Party. And I feel like that would basically just be a way to kickstart my campaign early by getting those signatures. So that's my bit I wanted to throw in. I've got to jump back to work, guys. It was great hearing from all of y'all.
Tucker, connect with Levi in the back channels. I want you guys talking, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, definitely. I followed him on X.
Yeah, we'll run you. I mean, we'll run everybody, but our members pick people, not the leaders. So it'll just be up to the people in your county or for whatever position you're running for. And I'm assuming you have a good chance if you help set it up. But the thing is, yeah, we have a youth program. We're going to do outreach here soon to universities and young leaders, basically people who still believe they can make change in this world and haven't been beaten down by the propaganda that nothing's possible besides the two parties. People who still have that hope and that fire. And yeah, no. And also, I think that people who don't run young leaders, like, Democrats or Republicans, they're, the older, the better. That's run by 80, 70-year-old on average, most of these states.
The centenarian, the octogenarian Congress.
It's octogenarian. And so which is a sign of corruption always. And so what people do is I think they misdiagnose the fundamental problems with a lot of these elections. They think it's about issues. They're like, oh, we just need a brilliant idea. We need a new idea. DC, I worked in the think tanks there. It's literally filled with dusty shells of brilliant ideas. It's not a lack of ideas. It's it's corruption.
Yep.
The problem
is
a
lack of organization and execution on the part of folks that are willing to face corruption effectively together.
Yeah, there's no unity amongst the people doing reform. And so what ends up happening is young leaders, who might have not much experience for local positions or state senate, or Tulsi ran for state senate when she was the youngest person in America to get in state senate. All these people, you can do it. Especially as an independent, people are very receptive to that. You just have to not be corrupt. If you get into a local office, make sure the money goes to your state, goes to your people, goes to your community. If you do that, you'll be phenomenally successful at any level of government. And because everything's being outsourced, everything's being shipped out to DC, all the contracts are on, all the things they do in whatever job you're in the public sector, it's going to be the same formula. take all the
Totally.
money, don't spend it on the people. And so if you're good on the money issue, you can be very popular at any level. So we're very open to young people running. It's actually one of our big recruitment tools is that we're one of the third parties who will actually consider them. We're like, if you're young and you're trying to make a difference, you have nowhere to go. Like everybody wants you to wait in line behind 80-year-olds. Like,
right.
This is the
Pay your
only
dues,
way.
so to speak.
Yeah, we don't have paying your dues. You just appeal to people in your community and they select you. That's the mechanism.
And Tucker, we talked about this. I know you got to go, buddy. We talked about this a little bit previously. That if you do the work in rallying your community and getting the awareness for an independent candidate and spend your time like literally trying to find a candidate you personally believe would better represent your community than you would, then the worst case scenario is you don't and you run yourself. And I think it shows a lot of integrity and would actually end up rallying your community really nicely if you were able to do that.
Yes, sir, exactly. If I could tell somebody that if you think you could represent the county better than I could and you're more prepared than I am, then let's sit down and talk about it and I'll help you out.
Yeah, be like, step up. Step up.
Yep.
You don't like me running? Step up.
or just I legitimately think that I'm more prepared. I've got more experience. I've got more connections. I should probably be the candidate. And it's this thing where we actually want the best candidates. We want the best representation. It's not an ego thing. It's not a ladder climbing thing. It's not an I'm trying to scrape out a position for myself thing. It's that we're legitimately trying to improve our government. And so when someone like Tucker comes to the table and he's clearly fired up and his heart and his mind are in the right place, there's a good chance he is the right candidate. But if he goes about the process of organizing his county and even around the state, trying to find better candidates, he might, and that's even better, right? Because it doesn't mean he won't be the right candidate eventually, but it does mean he will have done an incredible service for his community. But yeah, so let's Tucker, thank you so much, man. I know you got to go. I'm so glad you were able to make it for a little bit. Definitely connect with Levi. I'm gonna follow up with you and make sure you did it because this is really exciting.
Okay, I hope everybody has a great day, man. This has been a really good space to listen to.
Hell yeah, brother. Talk to you soon, man. I think the order we've got right now is it might have been Peaceful before Ed. You guys can let me know, and then Bryn.
Yeah, Peaceful, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is great. Sorry, I just been in and out because of duties. But I forgive me if I'm going over ground that's already been covered. But and I got a question for Levi. Do you see in this next either 2026 or 2028 the Forward Party getting any traction? And I say that because it sounded like Andrew Yang was hinting about going for the 2028. I could be imagining that. And also along with that, I just want to say, I've been seeing a lot of what if maybe loose coalitions, and you've all probably seen it too. We've seen AOC and Bernie Sanders on the platform together, all flavors of libertarians, the Liberty Party itself, again, Forward. In my own state of New York, where it's very difficult because we have closed primaries, very difficult to get on the ballot for anybody, as we saw with what happened, how Bobby got railroaded. We have Larry Sharp, who's a libertarian, is hinting at going after the gubernatorial against Governor Hochul. And then you got a lot of flavors out there that I'm seeing of different conservatives and coalitions, if you will. There's the First Principles people, which go under Rhino, RHINO. You got the new, I think it's called New Patriot Rebellion. And then, of course, you got the New Federalists who are out there. But you see all this flavor, all these different groups and coalitions and organizations. I presume they're going to be out there, and somebody's going to take more of a lead the next time.
Yeah. So I think we used to talk back when we were doing third-party spaces and when we were doing the MAHA Team spaces. But yeah, no. So what I would point out is that there's not a lot of flavor. I mean, there's a lot of logos. There's not a lot of flavors, because the brilliant thing is we definitely want to work with all those people. But I actually worked with the LAMARA, and libertarians are behind the scenes reaching out to us for all these positions. Because the problem with the Libertarian Party is, like most third parties that are traditional, they're very top down, and they have factions within them, so they can know the other two factions are not going to let them get the seat. So they already think that they're like, yeah, I'm going to run, but we're going to talk to you behind the scenes and try to set something else up. So we have a lot of wonderful candidates from the Libertarians already coming over. The Ford Party, Andrew Yang might run again. I don't know. But the thing about the entire Ford staff going to work for the Democrats, Dean Phillips, kind of soured their third party thing. I mean, they have a lot of brilliant people. I know I helped set up a lot of states for Ford Party. The thing is, the way they do ballot is very counterproductive. So they take enormous amounts of money and they put it in their DC. They have DC lobbyists and DC lawyers, and then they do the traditional Democrat Party way. And then so they burn up all their funds and they don't actually build out anything grassroots. It's been 5 years and they only have 2 states to show for it. Their website has a bunch of highlighted states where they have no teams. I know because I was the leader in those things, and they're still highlighted 3 years later. And so, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of this interest in the third party, especially as people realize in the political scene, they know that after Trump goes, the corporate Republicans are taking back over. The rhinos have it all set up. Like, they're not going to let another populist come up. It's going to go full corporate. And then there's going to be corporate versus corporate again. And so the third party space will boom probably by the midterms. And so all of the third parties are rushing with their logos to get the funding and the members. And that's what you're seeing. That's why you're seeing so many options. But if you actually look at their ballot, it never grows year to year. If you look at their leadership, like with the Ford, they control all your candidates, all your issues, and your budget. So basically, what's the point of being a leader if you can't control anything? Like, you do all the work, and then somebody out of state, that's actually what happened to me at the Ford Party. My first introduction to them was them running a DC lobbyist against me in my own race, who's from out of state. He flew in, he'd just been there a couple months, and he wanted to run. He was an Airbnb lobbyist. And he gave a donation to the Ford National chapter. The Oregon people didn't even know he was running. They nominated him against me. So then, before I was a leader for the Ford Party, they'd already tried to run lobbyists against me. So if corruption is not dealt with at the heart of your third party, you don't have a lot to offer your members long term. Like, short term, you can fundraise, but long term, all you're delivering is like a new Democrat Party, a new Republican Party, where all the powers at the top, the people have no say, and then all your candidates are the same because they have the people with the money. The lobbyists are the ones who can pay the bribes to the DC chapter to get nominated. So we have to reform the third party space if we're ever going to be taken seriously. And that's what we're trying to do, is become decentralized, pass the power down to the people, and then actually run new people, new candidates. And the only way we're going to get new blood in politics is not by not playing the same old game.
Okay, thank you.
Wow, that's inspiring. I really love hearing all this, and I love this education. It's just so powerful, and I'm shocked. I mean, Damo, you've said a few times, oh, I'm not surprised. I mean, my jaw has hit the floor at least 10 times during this conversation. I did not realize how bad it was, even in the third party sphere. I kind of took for granted that there was maybe a little bit better things going on, but so grateful for this knowledge. Ed,
Same.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. I mean, I said it already, but I'm surprised at how many big insights have come from this conversation already, Levi. Because I thought we were just going to sort of talk about independent candidate, talk about how someone can do it and stuff like that. And that's all really extremely important information, especially for us to get well out ahead of the midterm elections. But you're blowing my mind, bro. Seriously. I think Ed, you had your hand up, buddy, and then we'll get to John.
Yeah, thanks for having me up, and thanks, Levi, for giving us some great information. I'm getting kind of frustrated, I guess, because I came from the independent Bobby's movement, the MAHA, before it was MAHA, where Bobby worked he had the right idea. He met with farmers and he said, is there a way that we can fix our food system, that we can get the chemicals out, or at least limit them, make them a hell of a lot less prevalent? Can we raise the nutrient quality of our food? So he met with a lot of regenerative farmers, and we were really positive and supporting him. And then when he went with Trump, we realized that he couldn't, win under the independent. It would be good to get him in to the administration in some way so that he could have some influence. And I was glad to see him get into HHS. The problem is we completely lost USDA, and it's just every day it's showing more and more. I mean, Brooke Rollins has just been a disaster. She calls herself a MAHA mom, but she's meeting with all the, the farm bureaus, all the controlling agencies that have caused many of the problems. She's meeting with the big ag farmers. She's doing PR events, with those kind of groups. She hasn't mentioned decentralizing our food system at all. She hasn't mentioned regenerative at all. And then a lot of the USDA and especially the NRCS, which is the conservation area that regenerative has benefited from, a lot of those fundings either been frozen or cut. Now we have, it was interesting because what you hear of climate smart agriculture, that was basically stemmed from regenerative agriculture. In other words, the industrial ag realized that no-till, using some cover crops, what they call precision ag, where they just don't dump a bunch of pesticides, they try to apply them a little more precisionally. Those were all beneficial things, and they put it under the climate banner. And so at least the industrial farmers that went with that sort of stuff, it wasn't so much about climate. It was just about making our food better, not polluting our water, less chemicals on our food.
Hey, Ed.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt, buddy, but is this related to independent candidates and running third-party candidates? Because that's kind of the topic we're on today. We've got a great guest. So I really do want to make sure that we can stay on that topic while we've got him, and we've got a bunch of hands up for it too.
I actually can tie
it out to that.
I can tie in if you want me to.
Because of the independent deciding, sometimes you have to lean more one way or the other. It can cause a lot of problems. So it's why I think independent in general has to get more traction, or independents need to have more say when something like what Bobby happened. He was our independent candidate, and then all of a sudden he has to get into a party, but the disaster, the good, but the bad that happens from that, understanding that, the pluses and minuses of all that. It's all landed there.
I appreciate it, man. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that we kept the context, and I see how you brought it around, so I'm grateful for it, dude. Levi, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm an organic farmer, right? In addition to doing politics, I've always had a farm. And so like every year across the street, they try to spray us to these big ag farms, and everybody on my streets died from cancer related to pesticides, like over 30 people. And so, yeah, we're very aware of this issue. I've been involved in a long time. But what you have to realize is with these positions, like getting Kennedy in, there's two things. There's getting electoral wins, and then there's leverage. There's political leverage. And that leverage comes from having a movement, from having a larger cause. That down ballot and up ballot can pressure these politicians once they're in office to do the right thing, and also gives them the ability to negotiate with other people in office. So the more we make noise and the more we grow, the more he can in his meetings push back. So that's the way it works. So you can't just get one guy in and he saves the world. Like, we need a full scale movement. And when I saw that USDA pick, I assumed that farmers would move away. And so I've been working with a couple of groups to help integrate them into the 50-state coalition, which allows them to focus on things like changing the money around how small farms and regenerative farms work, which is getting the main consumers from prisons and schools to invest in regenerative farming and organic farming, and providing fresh food to their students and to their university students as well. And so we're trying to find a way to change the money, because there's one thing to do the policy side, it's another to do the implementation. And sometimes the implementation of policies is way more important than the policy itself. So if you could just change the vendors at the state and local level for like, oh, this university, this big university now is going to have a salad bar, that can help hundreds of farms over a decade get revenue. And by that, you grow up an ecosystem of more regenerative farms and more organic farms around the country. And so we need to change the money as well as the game. And so right now we're trying to focus on both those. So we're going to try to let more people run for these local boards that are very impactful for farming, like water and food and fertilizers. These are the people who actually implement the things that hurt the farmers. Like for right now in Oregon, they're using satellites to go after people gardening in their backyard to fine them hundreds of thousands of dollars for not using water rights because it's a public utility and the government owns it and you need their permission to use it in your garden, which is very authoritarian. And that's all local level stuff. So if we can push back on the local level, we can create these precedents that are allowed to be used all throughout the states. So yeah, we have a multi-pronged approach, and farming is like the basis of a society where things go wrong. We start poisoning on the farms. We start cutting all the wages. We start making all family farms go bankrupt through bad banking deals. And so they all get consolidated into big ag. Big ag was created by the government. It was not created by the private sector. It was created by collaboration with the local governments and corrupt officials to bankrupt farmers. So like these are all things we need to solve today. And we have candidates and we're going after the budgets.
Dude. So you just layered in like the other arguably biggest thing that I've been sinking my teeth into and are hoping that we can effectively organize around. I didn't expect that either. So there you go. Strike up number like 6 of you blowing my mind today. I would love to, I don't know how well woven you are in all of that. But I know that on my end, we're sort of making contact with several organizations and it's a big priority for us. So one more reason for hopefully us to get to collaborate more on the back end together. I think it went John and Robin, and I think Sean had his hand up at some point too. Sean, throw your hand back up if you want to, and we'll get to you. Go ahead, John.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. I've been on, but I'd been away from my phone, so forgive me if I'm asking a redundant question. But I understand you're not in all states, but if like I live in Oklahoma, and I don't think you're there, but if someone wanted to help build that up in a state that did not have a chapter, what is that process?
We have a state startup kit that we give you, and then I'll just get on Zoom with you guys and one by one walk you through the process of what you'll need. And we have a team for that too. But basically, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to start up chapters in different states because we're trying to be decentralized. So the main thing you do is you get on the ballot, you get a small team, you collect signatures. In states like Oklahoma, it's not terribly difficult. This is something you're going to knock out in 2 to 3 weeks. And then after that, we help you set up counties. So then the different counties pick the leaders, and then it kind of automates it where they do most of the work. The traditional parties would run everything. They'd nitpick and micromanage the whole state. It's a ton of work to run every race. But if you pick like 5 counties in your state, and you get like a couple of people doing that, they can then reach out to our mailing list. They can reach out to our members, invite them to meetings and invite them to things and show local leadership. And that takes the burden off of our state team. So like it can be a very manageable, doable thing. And yeah, just reach out to us. The website's there. You can also email team@wethepeople.wtpnational.com. And I'll just send you one of those kits we're setting up. We're still working on the graphics, but it'll be done in about a week or so.
Awesome.
Okay. And I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
Maha, I just had another question. Typically, when someone starts a chapter in a state, how many people do they typically have? Or is there a number of people that you would like to see starting a chapter?
I've actually done a lot of things. Like we've had hundreds of thousands of members before, and then we've had states with like only 10 or 20. And I actually prefer, at least for these states that have low level requirements for ballot access, to have smaller teams. There's no reason you need to have like a giant bureaucracy to run this thing. We're trying to run decentralized and a minimalist third party because we let our members choose. We don't need a bunch of staff. Our people do the voting. So we don't need like all these members. So 5 to 10 people in a state that is smaller and it has a small requirement for signatures, like only 1,000, 2,000 signatures, which I think is Oklahoma. That's enough to start the state level, and then you're going to want 5 to 10 people. You can start with 2 in each of the 5 counties, so you can do it that way. But the more the merrier at the county level, because they all vote and those are the people who pick your candidates. So you don't want just 2 people picking your candidates. You want more. You want as many as you can get.
Gotcha. Levi, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to go look at your website, and I will be in touch. Thank you again.
Thank you.
John, awesome. Thank you for taking the initiative, man. That's so huge. I think we just hooked Levi up with 2 more potential state catalysts here, which is.
I know you're over there putting notches in your belt, like little miniature awards on your desk. Like, woohoo! Look, I started another politician. Woohoo! I started another one. I love it.
Oh man! And look, this is such a great example of what we do here, and I end up saying it every time. That like every day we do one of these spaces, we end up connecting some people who can potentially do great work together. And I don't know how many spaces actually end up coming out of it with more than just a conversation. This is about grassroots organizing. This is about connection. This is about expanding our understanding and our networks and getting things done ultimately. Even if right in the moment we're mostly just talking. So I'm stoked that Tucker was here. John, I'm so thrilled that you want to step up. That's so cool of you. Anyone else in the room right now, if you or someone you know might want to get involved with the We the People Party, or even just third parties in general outside of sort of the legacy third party system, I definitely encourage you to link up with Levi in the back channels. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he sounds like he's the kind of guy that would love to talk to you and just help you get going. I think we've got Robin and then Sean.
Hey everybody, how are you? I'm grateful that I'm in this space today with all of you, because this is the power of the people, man. I love it. Levi, I have a specific question, and I hope I can articulate this right. Having gone through Bobby's independent run with trying to get him on the ballot on all 50 states, but mainly in California, because we really wanted to vote for him here in California. And we went through this nightmarish kind of thing with, he was running independent. Then we decided we were going with We the People, but then the Democratic Party screwed us around with trying to get us on there. And so he was offered the American Party, Independent Party. And so we went that way. And I know from experience over the last 2 years of, watching this like a hawk, that every state was different with deadlines and numbers of people and all of that. It was a mess. And you were really integral in that. I really appreciate all your work that you did that with all of us, Levi. So my question is there a way we can do this easier now and get it on the books and get the We the People ready? Or, yeah, I like that name. I think we should keep the name. And is it possible now? Is it easier now than it was back then? And let me see if I can articulate this correctly. Is it the same process like we had witnessed, with every state being different, with different due dates and all the stuff you have to put in your papers, all the different, I'm just curious of how that can be simplified before we get to a crunch time like we were with Kennedy. And I know we're not just talking about presidential. I know we're talking about local, county, statewide candidates to get everybody kind of, so we have a party that we can, harness our independent movement. That's where I'm at. So I hope that you understood my question. Is there a way we can do that now and be ready and start getting that working? I mean, that's what we're here for, I'm sure. But I'm just curious what happened to California. I don't even know if We the People is still part of that. Or is it like ready to go for us here?
Yeah, so California, first of all, it's a very important state. It's like what, the fourth largest economy in the world. The old joke in organizing around this is when I was in the EU and in India, they would say California law is global law because whatever you guys do, the social media control all elections in those countries. Like in India, you cannot run for office in any position if you disagree with a policy on Facebook or on Google. They'll take you off. They'll just completely remove. So people don't even know you're running in your own district in India. And it's very common. It happens a lot. So California has always been on my map as like a super important state. The economy is super important. The electoral votes are super important. So it's a vital state for any third party. If we can get California and make headway even in local races, like say for example in San Francisco area or LA, we can help transform these industries that have far-reaching consequences outside the state. So yeah, local elections are really global elections when they're in California. And so yeah, it's important. We do have a lot of members there. Our leadership has gone through quite a few changes, mainly because everybody knows that California's going to be big in the governor's race. So a lot of the money and PACs have come in and kind of picked out our leaders to be in the PACs so that the PACs can run and try to leverage those donor networks there. So the money has really gotten in the way in California, a big way. And so we have the people to do it. I think we have lower deadlines because it's not in a presidential race. So it's doable. But it's one of the hardest states to win just because they play really dirty with the local laws. Like you said with the Democrats, with your guys' thing, like they play hard ball because they know if any independent party wins and makes headway in California, that's enough money and members to then become a problem nationwide. And so that's why all the two parties are very angry and throw everything at you when you're in Texas, California, or New York. Because if you get one of those, you're going to be a problem for the next 50 years. So yeah, we are definitely going to try to focus in California. We got the people to do it. We'll do a signature campaign. We're looking for leaders there really to replace the leadership that have been taken out by money. Everybody middle and down in terms of organizing and experience, they're all there. They're all waiting. We have this giant army of people waiting. We just need some more local leadership. And we will
get it, Robin.
Well, I guess to tag onto that. So is our party intact? It's not on the books yet then. We still have to get signatures, it sounds like, to get a We the People party as a real party in California. Is that true?
Yeah. And
okay. So we're like starting over.
Yeah. Not really, because like when you start over, you don't usually have a bunch of volunteers. That's the hardest part. So the hardest part is done in terms of we already have people who are informed, already have played the game before. They've got one season of experience at least. And so that actually gives us a good running start. But yeah, you're right to assume that in terms of legal requirements, we have to start from scratch. And that is always a bit of a challenge, but it's not that bad. Like there's other states that are harder. And California has the advantage of just sheer numbers. They have just numbers of people. So even if you're 1% of the people, you're going to get an army of people. And so when we were in other third parties, California was always one of these states where we could always have massive chapters, even if they thought they, like with no labels or forward party, they put in a bunch of money to getting on the ballot there and it didn't materialize. And they often would go, oh, we're not going to win California, as in the Democrats got too strong of a hold and they wouldn't prioritize it. But then the rest of the year, all of these volunteers, this swarm of volunteers would be coming there because there's just sheer demand. So I always thought it was crazy that they wouldn't focus there because they were all focused on the presidential election and not the long-term picture. So if we're looking at it in a different way, California has a rich amount of volunteers and people wanting change. Because think about it, like in San Francisco, a Republican's not going to win. An independent can win. Somebody with a new thought, they can win. People will move to the middle. They're not, it's like we have in Oregon and Portland, and we also have Washington. We have Seattle and Portland in our network. Those guys are not going to have Republicans winning. It's just not going to happen. But they will. There's a huge amount of people who go independent. So I think California could be a really rich hotbed for us in the next few years.
Man, I love to hear that. I lived there
Good news.
for years. And I actually loved the state despite the political challenges, because it was just a beautiful place with a ton of beautiful people. And I think I agree with you. A lot of folks would be very open to independent candidates, knowing that a Republican's not going to win and the Democrats aren't doing the job. So Robin, make sure that you're staying close with Levi. Make sure you're up to date on what's going on. You can plug in with anything going on in California. I love knowing you're there because you're such a badass, and you did such great work during Bobby's campaign. So hell yeah. We've got about 15 minutes left. Please grab a mic if you got something to say. If you got some questions, we'd love to hear you. We've got Sean, if you still want to go, buddy, and then we've got Thomas.
Yeah, I'll go. This is the first time I've been in this space, and I'm just kind of collecting things. But I heard something about getting money out of politics. I do like a lot of what Levi is saying. I don't get into these, left, right, independent. They're all just a bunch of names, because if none of those are actually following the Constitution, then what are you really doing? One thing I think that would, I don't know if it's a benefit, but what needs to happen is the independent, quote unquote, party in DC actually needs to be its own party and caucus by itself, instead of, what is there, 2 of them right now that are senators that are caucusing with the Democrats. It just there needs to be a rule to say, okay, if you're going to be an independent, then you're a separate party and you caucus by yourself, and then you can vote, whatever. However, I think the biggest thing is the money issue, right? And it's been a while since I've heard it nationally, but they were talking about a campaign finance reform, or they would, nationally control the financing of all your, federal elections. That's a bad idea. I think it needs to be within your state. I don't know how many times I've been over social media or whatever, somebody from Michigan, hey, donate to my campaign. Well, I'm a Missourian. You don't represent me, you represent people from Michigan, and whatever. Even though we the same in our politics, to me, it's an influence. It's an outside influence. And I'll give an example. There was $100 million spent on that Supreme Court campaign in Wisconsin. And I'll bet, if you actually broke it down, I'll bet 60% of that came from outside the state. You had, and I'm not dissing on Elon or anybody, but the outside funding, Elon, George Soros, you had Pittsburgh, a governor from a different state donated money to that race. So I think if you want to get money out of it, you have to think of a way, and it's all different from all states, but you got to get the petition within your state. And I think this would be a big thing, because everybody wants money out of politics. And it's really most corrupt when you have people from out of state, when you have the national interests coming into your state, making donations and then being beholden to a particular way. It's just like, I'll give an example. In Missouri, abortion was at 8 weeks. And then they changed the Constitution, and $30 million came from out of the state, came from a law firm in DC. And most of the pro-life was within the state. They didn't get a lot of support. And now we're back to the 24-week abortion thing. I mean, whatever. I think everybody will all benefit better if we get the money within the state, get all these donations out of your state that are coming from out of your state. And I'm kind of rambling now, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about. So I'll just leave it there, and I appreciate it.
Hey, appreciate you, man. And welcome to Spaces. It's a whole nother beast. Thanks for having some courage and taking a mic. I really appreciate you stopping in and sharing your thoughts, man. Seriously. Thomas?
Levi.
Oh, yeah. ahead,
What's our
Kristina.
plan? What's our plan for getting money out of politics? Do we have one? Do we overturn Citizens United? Do we leave it there? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Citizens United requires a constitutional amendment in order to improve. So it's a really hard ask. So I think that one of my specialties is actually in anti-corruption. I used to fight corruption in the most corrupt countries in the world. I always like to say I was preparing for DC when I was in Bangladesh fighting their government, the corruption there. And so but what you have to do is like, I'm used to being outnumbered in a country where all the laws and all the things benefit against us for corruption. And you can make headways at the local level. And so leading by example is the fundamental way to fight corruption, right? So at the party level, we can implement anti-corruption measures. Like, for example, by having our members vote, they can't bribe our leadership. That's a big one, because then all of the candidates in that state aren't picked directly by donors. Even if they do get donations, it doesn't impact the thousands and tens of thousands of people voting in that state. You know what I'm saying? So like that's one mechanism. Another mechanism is automatic ballot renewals. So basically, one part of the problem with incumbency is that they get money, and who's the more popular one with the money wins and wins and wins and wins. And they're there for life. There's no term limits. One of the ways we can do that is if we ask what are the top 5 things people want in their district. If during their term they don't serve those top 5 things, or at least 3 out of 5, like the majority, they automatically don't get to be reelected through us. So all the politicians who don't follow what the people want while they're in office get punished. So you have to have disincentives and incentives. You have to have it where there's consequences for betraying your people. And that's the thing with corruption. Like, they can just do the exact opposite. If you look at what people want in America, on like 70%, 80% of Americans want on issues, they never get served for decades. But if you look at what donors want, there's like a 99% level of success that they get what they want. So like the system does work very well for rich donors, and it works horrifically for the people, which is not what we want. So on a party level, we can implement these like big changes to corruption. And then we can say, at least on every ballot that we run somebody, there's a choice where there's not a donor money controlling that candidate. And that's a huge thing we can do at the local and state level all across the country, without having to pass constitutional amendments, without having to get the people who are getting bribed to write anti-bribery legislation, which is very hard to do, by the way. Like, and that's the trouble. We have to just get new blood in first who will be willing to pass those laws. Because the main issue right now is we have brilliant ideas on how to fight corruption, but none of them get implemented because you require the person who's compromised to write the bill, whether it's at the judicial level, who also, by the way, get donations, whether it's at the legislative level who get donations, whether it's the Supreme Court who gets a donation. Like, every level is the ones getting the money. So it's I think by just living by example and then having voters educated that they know, that's a huge selling point for a third party. If they find out that you're the only option on the ballot that isn't straight up paid for, like, that's a huge, these people hate corruption, and they always vote for the outsider. Whether it's Trump, who they think is less bought because he's rich, or whether it's independent candidates at the state level, they always vote for the people they think are the outsider, or the people who aren't getting bought. And so we can use that as a selling point for us to grow. We can also try to implement within our own state, in our bylaws, writing in measures that limit terms, that limit how donations work and the mechanisms. And by having these bylaws on our website and educated in our membership, we can kind of indoctrinate a whole generation of people from a variety of backgrounds, whether libertarian or green, to go, hey, there's another way we can do this. And so that's what I'm hoping to do. And if you have any other ideas, I'd be willing to hear them.
Love that, Levi. You're right. We need fresh blood, and it's so profound, but like obvious to say that of course these things aren't being passed into law, that policy isn't being crafted because of the very people in those positions. It's cross purposes with them and the benefits they're getting by not passing that legislation. There's a saying that I will probably butcher. That's something like, your ability to understand something is inversely proportional to your
Ability to
reliance.
explain it.
Yeah, that's pretty close. But like, the more you're reliant on money for something that's wrong, the less likely it is you're going to understand why it's wrong, basically. but I did totally butcher that. So thanks for calling me out. That was fun. We've got like 5 minutes left. Thomas, what's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going, man? Thanks for hosting this space. It's a great space. Man, some great points. This has been a really enjoyable listen. I wanted to kind of ask, pick Levi's brain because I've been kind of thinking of like, how do we address some of these disparities that affect our country, as no matter who's in office, because frankly, we have systemic disparities going on. We have water quality issues, food deserts. We have unsafe schools. There was just another active shooting in Dallas. I'm in Texas here. But I was thinking, what would be the how effective would creating like a PAC for like a We the People party, if there's not one already that's already kind of trying to address these issues, trying to get just back candidates that are for these issues. The same way kind of APAC goes for issues in Israel, or Act Blue goes for democratic issues. I think we need something to address like the issues that Americans, we all face these there's cities here that are in crisis. We have like Detroit that has a distressed population of 96%. Memphis, Tennessee is over 60% distressed population. Tens of thousands homeless veterans, lots of stuff going on, 19,000 homicides a year. And, shockingly, we have over that number in medical malpractice deaths. So there's lots of stuff going on, and it seems like both parties all kind of pit us against each other on these singular issues. And, it's not that complicated to get a PAC together. And if it was funded through grassroots, and if we created a board with people like Levi and people who are really in tune with these issues and things that are going on, and how the system really works, and how to be, utilize the most effective use of something like this, some kind of organization. You get a board together, you file with the FEC, and you get the ball rolling. You address something like water quality. It wouldn't be that hard to get like the lead out of water. There's so many places around the country that are suffering from very simple issues that are very easy to fix. As a plumber, I installed whole house water filters. It is not a complicated system, putting like an RO. You could do it at the municipality level, get it before it's even going into people's homes. But if you have like bad pipes, like what you see all over the country, places like Detroit, these lead pipes and stuff, you put it at the residential level. You install, you get this thing together. I mean, just talking about one issue, but there's a lot of stuff that we face, and it'd be great to kind of try to put some grassroots money behind the issues that, no matter who's in office. But I just wanted to throw that out there, and thanks for the mic. Love the space. It's been a great listen.
Awesome, man. Really appreciate you being here for it and sharing your thoughts. Levi, did you have any sort of response to the idea of a We the People PAC?
Yeah, so there's a few PACs out there. They're not We the People. There's MAHA PACs. There's other groups, and they talk to me all the time. I called them. I worked for a few of them. I've been called by them, but at the end of the day, there's a separation between the legal abilities of PACs to coordinate with states and parties that limit their ability to solve the problem that you're trying to solve. So it is a great idea, and I agree with it mostly. But what I would say, and I point out there, is that LLC is probably more needed for that. We've already about 8 years we've been working on that, which was that we need financial independence, right? We can't just have political independence where we have our own ideas. We need financial independence, because otherwise what you'll see is you have this huge vulnerability in all your elections where you have no money every year. So you have to beg every year in all 50 states and thousands of races. So what ends up happening is whoever has the most money, inevitably over a 10-year period, ends up owning everybody. And it just slowly acquires the whole party. And then you become just like the Democrats or Republicans, which, that's the inevitable mechanism when you don't have financial independence. And so we're hoping to put some portion of our donations aside to make a reoccurring low fee index fund, which will be able to, and this is separate from the party because the way it's being set up, probably LLC or something of the sort, another financial vehicle, which allows compounding fees to get us so that we need less and less donations every year for candidates, and then eventually none. And then we'll be able to run our own candidates with our own funding and not have to ask anybody for anything. And that's ultimately the place we want to be if we're fighting corruption. So the other point there is that vendor contracts. So the reason why lead is not being taken out, and thousands of cities. It's in like over 10,000 cities, right? That are getting lead poisoned. And that's been known since the Roman times to be a bad idea. But it's all over the place. So whether it's farming or whether it's agriculture, all these things have the same thing. They're broken on purpose. Whether it's a hospital charging 800 times more for a bandage than the one down the street, all these things have financial incentives, and they have bad financial incentives towards regulators. So what happens is when you regulate an industry, as you guys probably know, you control who gets the money. So you have no bid contracts at the state and local level for all these industries for lead. They pay the money to fix the problem over and over, whether it's homelessness or whether it's, they pay and pay and pay, and the problem only gets worse because the incentive is to never fix it. Like they don't get paid, the money stops if they fix the problem. And so like because of these incentives, that's why local leadership is so vital, because even if we get all the governors and we get all the senators at the federal level in, it will make almost no impact on the quality of life for most people, because once those policies are issued, they go to state and local authorities, who then, like 98% of the contracts go out to vendors, and then the vendors fulfill them. And those vendors overcharge. They take 8 times longer on a road. They take 10 times longer on a piping system. They bleed the system dry. And that parasitic relationship with local authorities and vendors is the fundamental problem for most projects in most areas. So if the vendor local politician relationship is the most important thing in America for quality of life. So we have a quality of life campaign we're going to start, where we just focus on the water, we focus on the lead, we focus on the things, the pain points for citizens in their day-to-day life. And then we go, yeah, you should run, and a friend or family member or somebody in your community you think would be great. Let's run them and let's get them in and make them turn that fountain of wealth from the richest country in the history of the world onto the local economy, and then take away all these incentives for bad behavior. And so we can't expect different outcomes when we're literally paying people 8 times more to poison us.
Whew. Sean, I'll let you go one more time real quick, and then we're going to close it out. It is after 4 o'clock. What do you got, bud?
Yeah, so this is pretty quick. So again, back to what I was saying about getting the money. So having a PAC, don't have a national one, have 50 of them. Have 50 We the People of California, because that's what our preamble says. We the people of the United States. So we the people of California, we the people of Missouri, we the people of North Carolina. Have each individual PAC, and those PACs fund your candidate inside that state. I hope that makes sense, and I'll leave there.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, but the problem is then they want something, they can ask something from our candidates. An outside group who don't get to vote for these candidates is telling them what to do. So money talks. And so even if you create all these PACs, which by the way, there are thousands and tens of thousands of PACs who all think they're good natured and their members are great. Even right now, today, there's hundreds of millions of dollars for MAHA candidates. Is that being funded to the MAHA candidates around the state? Is that money going to this? You know what I'm saying? The money and the incentive structure through PACs, it wouldn't hurt to have more financial support. But if you realize those PACs are going to big donors and they're making agreements on certain issues, on healthcare and on foreign policy, and then those are the people who are then giving you the money. Now that's an outside influence in your candidates, which is very, very similar to the Democrat Party system and the Republican Party today, which is a bunch of PACs give money to their leaders and then they want stuff. So if you give donations to the party, the state party, we can have it in our bylaws where 70% of the budget is controlled by the members, so they can control that money. So all these donations come in, and then the people in that community dictate where the money goes and what candidates they want to financially support. Because some will need a lot more and some will need less because the race doesn't need that much money because it's small. And so by leaving that up to the people, the money, you can fight corruption. But if you delegate it to outside authorities who have every interest in the world to be one-sided, and they're basically special interest groups, having special interest groups control your candidates is never going to long-term provide better outcomes, is what I would say.
Awesome insight, man. And all of this has been awesome insight on way deeper into where I thought we were even get today on the topic, sort of party infrastructure and the dynamics of money and the dynamics of forming parties and using them to run independent candidates and all that. It's so huge. I can't wait to have you back again and again. Super grateful for everyone tuning in. Please follow us, MAHA Damo, Club MAHA, Kristina, America Mission, Levi. Please come back again. Keep joining us. This is a movement. We are actively building this movement as we talk together and connect and explore these issues and meet these organizations doing this critical work. And I really hope I see you again Friday and Monday and Wednesday and Friday and Monday and Wednesday. And I love you. Take care. See you soon.